Today we will discuss the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, otherwise known as IDEA. Initially put into place in 1975, this act was to ensure that all children with disabilities were given a free public education with teachers who are properly trained to help educate and assess the needs of these children. Before anything like this was made law, children with disabilities had a grim life. In colonial America, caring for people with disabilities was often the responsibility of the town. People with disabilities and criminals were often lumped into one group. The Johnson County Poor Farm and Asylum was opened in 1855, and they argued that they offered good living conditions. However, these places were often dirty and housed men and women in the same space with little oversight. Unfortunately, individuals with physical or cognitive disabilities were often labeled as lunatic or insane and were sent to asylums. However, better living conditions and situations started to appear in Europe after the introduction of moral treatment, where doctors discouraged restraints. More things started to change in 1959 with the Training of Professional Personnel Act, which allowed for more than 30,000 people to be trained as special needs teachers. There were also captioned films made that were seen by more than 3 million deaf people. It was obvious that an effort was being made like none before. From the 1960s to the 1990s, many private hospitals and institutions were shut down. This led to better state-funded programs in place of these hospitals. The IDEA Act in 1975 required properly trained educators, so there was a growing demand for new teachers. After 30 years of research and experience, the government had discovered that children with special needs learn best when high-quality, intensive pre-service preparation and professional development from all personnel who work with children with disabilities. This ensures that such personnel have skills and knowledge necessary to improve the academic achievement and functional performance of children with disabilities, including the use of scientifically based instructional practices to the maximum extent possible. However, there is still a downside to diagnosing and labeling children as disabled. One of the problems noticed by schools and lawmakers in Connecticut was that children of minority greatly outnumbered white children labeled as disabled. This was a result of misinterpreting behavioral problems and cultural differences. This issue has forced school districts to change the way they spend money on special education and has pushed states to increase monitoring of special education placement. Experts point to a handful of reasons why the disproportions exist. Teachers, social workers, and psychologists often have to make subjective decisions on whether a child should receive special education services. Those decisions, along with these tests that children take to determine their intellectual ability, offer numerous opportunities for bias to creep into the process. Educators, for instance, can misinterpret cultural cues as evidence of an emotional or intellectual disability. Some of the tests designed to determine a child's intelligence have also been culturally biased. In some places, parents are trying to combat this kind of misrepresentation. A nonprofit group was started in Hartford, Connecticut by a mother to a child with disabilities. African Caribbean American Parents of Children with Disabilities advocates for parents and calls attention to overrepresentation. I will pause here for this small excerpt from a mother. This has also prompted administrators to provide a more detailed training for educators whose special needs population is skewed more towards minorities. Having teachers with specialized training to deal with the unique student population greatly increases the efficacy of teaching efforts. With the proper education, even a child with special needs can become a self-sustaining individual.